It started with the rain. Not just any rain, but the kind of downpour that seems almost alive, angry and relentless, filling the air with the constant deafening drumbeat of water. For those who experienced it, the rain was not the story. The doors were. The first known sighting occurred on a stormy night in February of 1997 in a small, unassuming town of Arlington, Oregon. What began as an odd, isolated incident would soon grow into an enduring mystery, one that has baffled scientists, frightened witnesses, and intrigued believers across the world. The doors, freestanding, unconnected to any structure, and impossibly dry in the heaviest of rains. The first known case, Evelyn Hart. The woman who first reported the phenomenon was Evelyn Hart, a retired librarian in her late 60s. Evelyn had lived in Darrington her entire life, and was known for her meticulous habits. She wasn't the type to fabricate stories or draw attention to herself, which only made her account more unsettling. I was walking my dog Gracie around the block, Evelyn explained in a recording interview years later. The storm had been going on all day, and the streets were practically rivers. I remember thinking I shouldn't have gone out at all, but Gracie was restless, and she wouldn't let me sit still. It was around 9:30 p.m. when Evelyn turned onto Chestnut Avenue, a quiet residual street lined with modest houses and maple trees. That's when she saw it. There was this door just standing there, right in the middle of the road. It wasn't attached to anything. No frame, no wall, nothing. Just a plain wooden door. It didn't make any sense. Evelyn described the door as being about 7 feet tall, made of dark mahogany with an old-fashioned brass knob. She insisted it wasn't there when she had walked down the same street earlier that day. It didn't belong, she said, her voice trembling. It was like it had been plucked from somewhere else and dropped here. But it wasn't wet. Everything else was soaked through, but the door was bone dry. Gracie, Evelyn's usually calm and friendly Labrador, began barking furiously, refusing to go near the door. Evelyn, too, felt a sense of unease. It wasn't just that it was out of place, she said. It felt wrong, like it was watching me. Evelyn's account was dismissed by most as a hallucination or a fabrication, but within weeks, similar stories began to emerge from other towns, first nearby and then spreading further away. By the early 2000s, reports of mysterious doors had been documented across the United States, from rural back roads in Kansas to the bustling streets of New York City. Witnesses came from all walks of life, students, truck drivers, office workers, and their descriptions were unnervingly consistent. Each door was unique in design, but they all shared certain traits. They appeared only during heavy rain, they stood unsupported, and they were always dry. One particularly chilling report came from 14-year-old Michael Torres in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was biking home from my friend's house, Michael said in a recorded testimony. It was pouring rain, and I was going as fast as I could. Then, right in the middle of the road, there was this door. I almost crashed into it. Michael described the door as bright red with peeling paint and a silver handle, but what stuck out to him most was what he heard. There was a sound coming from behind it, like whispering, but I couldn't make it out in words. It sounded like a bunch of people all talking at once, really quietly. Terrified, Michael turned and pedaled away as fast as he could. When I looked back, it was gone. By 2005, the doors had become the subject of intense speculation among researchers and enthusiasts of the unexplained. While some dismissed the phenomenon as a series of elaborate hoaxes, others believed there was more to the story. Dr. Alan Whitaker, a physicist and leading voice in the study of anomalous events, offered his perspective. The idea of these doors existing independently of any physical structure defies all known laws of physics, Whitaker said in a 2006 interview. If the reports are to be believed, the doors not only remain stationary without support, but also repel water and appear in locations that seem entirely random. One of Whitaker's more controversial theories suggested that the doors could be manifestations of interdimensional rifts. If we consider the possibility of parallel dimensions, he explained, these doors could represent temporary gateways between our world and another. The rain, with its unique atmospheric conditions, might act as a catalyst for their appearance. Not everyone was convinced. Skeptics argued that the phenomenon was nothing more than a combination of mass hysteria, urban legend, and misinterpretation of natural events. Dr. Karen Simmons, a psychologist, pointed to the human brain's tendency to find patterns and assign meaning to random occurrences. In times of stress, like during a storm, our minds can play tricks on us. A shadow or a reflection could easily be mistaken for something more sinister, especially if the idea of these doors is already in the public consciousness. But for those who had seen the doors firsthand, no amount of skepticism could erase the memory of their encounters. By the late 2010s, the phenomenon had begun to attract a dedicated following of amateur investigators, paranormal enthusiasts, and conspiracy theorists. Online forums and social media groups sprang up, sharing stories, theories, and alleged photographs of the doors. One such investigator, known only by the pseudonym Rainwatcher, claimed to have tracked over 300 sightings worldwide. The patterns are undeniable, Rainwatcher wrote in a widely shared post. The doors appeared during specific times of storms, high humidity, low atmospheric pressure, and temperatures between 40 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not random. But the more people searched for answers, the stranger the phenomenon became. In 2019, a group of researchers attempted to study a door that had appeared during a storm in Vancouver, Canada. Armed with cameras, sensors, and recording equipment, they approached the door cautiously. The footage they captured was baffling. As the team drew closer, their equipment malfunctioned, cameras flickered, audio was distorted, and GPS devices reset to coordinates that didn't exist. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the door vanished. In the weeks following Evelyn Hart's report in Arlington, Oregon, an eerie trend emerged. Individuals in nearby towns began recounting similar encounters. A farmer in Astoria, a teacher in Salem, and even a highway patrol officer near Portland all described stumbling upon solitary doors in the rain. One particularly unsettling account came from an oil field worker named Jake Forrester, who encountered a door on an isolated road in eastern Washington. "I was driving back to the camp after my shift," Jake recalled in a podcast interview. "The rain was coming down so hard I could barely see the road ahead. Then, out of nowhere, my headlights hit it. A door, standing right in the middle of the highway." Jake pulled over to investigate. It was old, like something you'd see in an old church or a castle. Heavy wood, black iron hinges. I got out of the truck and walked up to it. But the closer I got, the weirder I felt, like my whole body was vibrating. When asked if he tried to open the door, Jake shook his head. "Hell no," he said. "It felt alive, like it was watching me, daring me to touch it. I backed off, got into my truck, and drove around it. I wasn't about to mess with whatever that was." Jake's account, like many others, was dismissed by skeptics, but those who had experienced the phenomenon knew the truth. The doors were real, and they were not meant to be touched. By 1998, a small team of amateur researchers had begun compiling data on the phenomenon, calling themselves the Raingate Society. The group documented over 50 sightings in the Pacific Northwest alone. Their findings revealed a chilling pattern, the first of which was locations. The doors often appeared in remote or sparsely populated areas, though urban sightings were not unheard of. The second pattern, weather conditions. Heavy rain was a universal factor, with most sightings occurring during storms classified as severe or extreme. And the third pattern, witness accounts. While descriptions of the doors varied, recurring details such as the dryness and unsettling presence were consistent. One of the Society's founding members, a former meteorologist named Carla Reed, suggested a link between the doors and electromagnetic anomalies. "Many witnesses reported their compasses spinning wildly near the doors," Reed explained in a 2001 documentary. "This suggests that whatever is causing the phenomenon disrupt the Earth's magnetic field." Reed's theory gained traction when a hunter in Montana shared footage of his handheld GPS malfunctioning near a door. The device, which had been tracking his location accurately, suddenly displayed coordinates that placed him somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. As reports of the rain door spread, similar sightings began surfacing from other countries. In 2003, a fisherman in Cornwall, England, claimed to have seen a weathered blue door standing on the shore during a torrential downpour. "It wasn't like anything I'd ever seen," he said in an interview with a local paper. "It looked like it had been there for years, but there were no footprints, no signs of how it got there." In Japan, a woman walking her dog during a typhoon stumbled upon a sliding shoji door, perfectly dry despite the sheet of rain around it. "I could hear something faint," she said. "A child's voice maybe, but when I leaned closer, it stopped." A team of scientists from Kyoto University later examined the area, but found no evidence of the door or the voice. By 2010, the rain doors had been reported on every continent. Each sighting added new layers to the mystery, yet no concrete answers emerged. One of the most famous and unsettling cases occurred in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Amid the chaos of the storm, emergency responders reported seeing a glowing white door in the flooded streets of the French Quarter. "At first we thought it was a piece of debris," said firefighter Marcus Lane, "but as we got closer we realized it wasn't moving. It was just there, standing upright in the middle of the water." Lane and his team approached the door cautiously, noting its pristine condition despite the surrounding devastation. One of the firefighters, a man named Paul Leduc, claimed to hear faint music emanating from behind the door. "It was like jazz," Leduc said, his voice shaking in an interview years later. "But it wasn't any song I recognized. It sounded off, like it was being played backward or something." The team decided to leave the door untouched and continued their rescue mission. When they returned to the site a few hours later, the door was gone. While most witnesses avoided touching the doors, a handful of individuals claimed to have turned the knobs or pushed them open. Their accounts were as rare as they were disturbing. In 2008, a construction worker in Brisbane, Australia encountered a sleek, modern door during a thunderstorm. Despite feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, he opened it. "There was nothing on the other side," he said. "Just blackness, not like a dark room. This was endless. It felt like if I stepped through, I'd just fall forever." The man reportedly experienced nightmares for months afterward, describing dreams in which he was falling through a void filled with whispers. Another account came from a woman in Quebec, Canada, who opened a door in her backyard during a torrential rainstorm. She claimed to see a distorted version of her own house on the other side, as if viewed through a funhouse mirror. "I slammed it shut and ran inside," she said, "but when I turned around, the door was gone." As sightings continued into the 2010s, theories about the rain doors grew increasingly diverse. Among the most popular ideas were a natural phenomenon. Some researchers suggested that the doors were optical illusions caused by a combination of rain, light, and environmental factors. Dimensional portals. Proponents of fringe science argue that the doors could be a gateway to a parallel universe or an alternate reality. Extraterrestrial origins. A small minority of theorists think that the doors are alien constructs designed to study or interact with humans. Psychological manifestations. Skeptics maintain that the doors were products of mass hysteria fueled by the human brain's tendency to seek patterns. Each theory raised as many questions as it answered, leaving investigators and witnesses alike grasping for clarity. The phenomenon of the rain doors remains as enigmatic today as it was when Evelyn Hart first encountered the solitary door on Chestnut Avenue. Despite decades of research, no definitive explanation has emerged. For those who have seen the doors, the memory lingers, an unsettling reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved. As the rain falls, and the world continues to turn, one thing is certain. Somewhere, another door is waiting.